Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania is another new era in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in which it is the first of the Phase 5 installments, and it's also the sequel to both Ant-Man, which was released in 2015, and Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018, which technically makes it a trilogy, and it's also now the fourth time that we've seen an MCU character have installments within its own franchise, featuring 3 films or more, including Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, and Thor. Now, the build-up to this film was something that I was hoping would create a lot more intrigue than what we got with Phase 4, because people have had mixed reactions to Phase 4 so far because of the inconsistencies and because of, you know, the overwhelming amount of content that we've had, but the lack of direction. And we knew that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was going to be a film that would introduce Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I had the expectation that this one will do exactly the same, a lot like how Ant-Man and the Wasp and the first Ant-Man film had such a significant impact on the Avengers films that led up to the end of Phase 3. So as I said, this film is a continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it follows Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, who, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm, where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible, including an encounter with Kang the Conqueror, who has plans of his own. Now, in many ways, a lot of the things within the story of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania are things that we have seen before. We know about the quantum realm, but this film aims to explore other avenues about what it really is. Because the quantum realm has previously been represented as an empty chasm, and that it has no limits in terms of its functions of space and time. But here, it's actually a whole entire universe with creatures and people living in it. And I think in terms of the quantum realm, it does touch upon certain things that we can look forward to leading up to the rest of Phase 5 and going into Phase 6. But I just think generally I wasn't entirely sure that we got the quantum realm that we deemed as dangerous or as something that was quite sincere, because to me it just didn't feel like it was anything different than any other fictional world that we've ever seen in cinema. Because we do see some things in this film that are part of what we'll see in the future, such as Kang and his army, which we already knew before watching this film anyway, and for me it just didn't really kind of grasp what the whole influence of the quantum realm was going to be this time. Because when I think about it, the Phase 3 installments of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything that happened with Thanos, etc., and the time travel, it set such a high standard. This was my concern to begin with about Phase 4, 5 and 6 of the MCU. How will they top that? What kind of things will they explore that will make us go, oh my gosh, that was even better than the last time? And I think because the quantum realm has been a significant part of those previous phases I've already mentioned, and they appear to be somewhat significant here as well, I just feel at the moment it's not really showing us all that much that we don't already know, and it's just not creating enough drama with the idea that the quantum realm is something to be fearful of. And I think for something like that, you need to be afraid of it. You need to be afraid of being in a world where you almost can't get out, and if there is a way out, there's very few of them. But in terms of the things that we do see in the quantum realm and the way that the story is structured, it's almost like a space opera, but it's just not actually in space. It's in this tiny little ball thing at the beginning of the film that they go into, and that's what I thought was an interesting aspect of it, because it had moments in it that would kind of make you think, you know what, that looks just like a classic Star Wars scene. But I think in terms of it trying to stand out differently to give that dramatic effect about the quantum realm going forward, I just don't think it was quite there. And this is what my concern is as well, because when you look at films from phases 1, 2 and 3, there was a lot more jeopardy. There were villains who had weaknesses, and they were in a particular zone, which could be like a world or a certain place, that had limits. But because now they're introducing time travel and they're introducing multiverse and variants and all these things, there's no kind of closure or massive climax in the hope that you would go out and defeat the villain, because even if you do defeat one, they could ultimately come back all over again. We know that already from, for example, Emperor Palpatine in the Star Wars films, and a part of me is very intrigued about that, because I know that Kang the Conqueror is a significant part of the Avengers in the original comics. Maybe they're just waiting for something to completely erupt that would be mind-blowing for the audience, and judging from this film alone, I'm not entirely sure what we got, to be honest, other than the fact that it was just going to be an introduction to it, and we just didn't really get what was going on. It was just bloated with CGI. The CGI was very overwhelming at the best of times, and they had so much of it. In fact, I would probably go so far as to say that it had a lot more CGI in that film alone than the entire Star Wars prequel trilogy. I was thinking visually, it would be something that was just like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But because the concept of the film was very broad and ambiguous, they could have generated so many more different ideas for this film, but unfortunately they fell short. And this is why I'm quite surprised as well about Peyton Reed, because he directed the previous two Ant-Man films and he returns in this one as well. In his situation, I feel as though he's torn between a rock and a hard place, because it is one of two things. It could either be where Reed is being told what to do by the studio and that there is a lack of creative freedom for him to express the character and give us that introduction to the quantum realm aspects and Kang, etc. Or has he just truly lost the plot here? You be the judge on that, but either way, it was something that was quite disappointing. Now, the acting actually was a bit of a mixed bag for me. Generally, I've been a fan of Paul Rudd in his portrayal of Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, because the character was originally a criminal, and it was through the wit of that character and Rudd's performance that made him a very likeable hero. Obviously, alongside the superpowers that came along with it. And it was actually really nice to see Paul Rudd back in the role of Ant-Man again. I think the whole purpose of the character in this film was to focus on his relationship with his daughter Cassie, who of course we saw in previous installments when she was very young, and then the Thanos snap happened and 5 years went by and then he saw her as a young woman. And I thought that part of the story was good because it was about how they rebuilt that relationship from what happened previously by fighting against a new threat. And in the role of Cassie was Catherine Newton, and she's actually not the first person to play Cassie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because the role previously in Avengers Endgame was played by Emma Thurman. And like I say, a portion of the story was focusing on her relationship with her dad, and I thought Catherine Newton actually did a decent job in this film. I don't think the comedic timing and the wit was quite there at the best of times, but I think in terms of what she brought to the table, I thought she did a decent job, and maybe she will just improve over time by playing the character more. Now, besides Ant-Man himself, our eyes were particularly drawn to Jonathan Majors as Kang, because he has been built up as the new Thanos. And to be fair, Jonathan Majors absolutely killed it in this film, and he gave such a great performance, because even in a story that was a little bit clunky and disjointed on many occasions, he still managed to bring a lot of drama and a lot of sincerity and a lot of intimidation as well going forward. And that's what you want from a villain like this, because in the future he will face off against more Avengers than Thanos did, and I think his presence was a really great introduction to the character. And to be honest, I thought he was the best part in the whole film, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again in future installments. We also saw the return of Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer, who all reprised their roles from the previous films. And I thought that Evangeline Lilly's character Hope was quite underwhelming, because despite being alongside Ant-Man and the other characters, she didn't really have much else to do independently, and maybe she was meant to have a more supporting role in this one, because it was about Lang's relationship with his daughter, the introduction of Kang, and also further expansions on the quantum realm. And the legendary Michael Douglas returns as Dr. Hank Pym. And to be honest, I've actually really liked his involvement in the franchise so far, because he's brought a lot of intelligence about the Hank Pym character and what he does, hence everything that happened in Phase 3. But in this one we didn't quite see that, because it wasn't entirely about him, although we still know that his unusual admiration for ants is still there. And in quite a surprise move, Michelle Pfeiffer's character Janet had a really significant role, and to an extent the entire multiverse saga. You'll have to watch the film and find out that for yourself, but I think overall Michelle Pfeiffer's performance was actually quite good, and I also really like Bill Murray's appearance in this film too. In fact, it reminded me somewhat of Jeff Goldblum's character in Thor Ragnarok. So overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is a film that's a little bit of a clunky start to Phase 5 of the MCU, because it was way overloaded with CGI and the story was quite clunky at the best of times, and also I think because the standards have really risen over the past couple of years because of Phase 3, and we've had so many entries into Phase 4 since Endgame that the expectations for this are even higher than they were before, and I'm starting to find that Marvel don't even know what to do. In fact, there's a cruel irony to it, because I feel as though at the moment Marvel are in their own quantum realm, because they're not really showcasing the direction that they're going in, or at least they're not communicating that well enough to the audience. And now I'm praying that the future installments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe will entice and enhance that interest and that build-up going into Avengers The Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. What did you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania? Did you think it was a bit clunky and a bit disjointed? Or did you find that it was a lot more entertaining and that it was a really good entry into Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you did go on to enjoy this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and to have a notification bell ticked so you're notified when I upload a new video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.